Welcome everyone to today's program. I want to do a huge welcome to all of our ISM member and any guests that might be out listening today. We are pleased to welcome back Jim Fleming, who is the Manager of Product Development and Innovation, as well as a Senior Instructor at the ISM. His multi-phase role includes leading development of education and training courses, individual and organizational assessments, and corresponding capability models for an AI-based solution, instructing classes, and more as a dedicated subject matter expert. He has his CPSM, his CPSD, and prior to ISM, he spent more than 30 years working for Intel Corporation, primarily in the supply chain management roles. He retired from Intel in 2014 and pursued his passion for education by joining ISM. Jim will be speaking today on navigating and leveraging the ISM certifications. Please make sure to put any questions or comments in our chat or in our Q&A area, and Jim will answer them as soon as he's able to, either in the middle or at the end of his presentation. And we will also be recording this program, so believe me, we will be sending that out to you a little later today, along with your continuing educational credit. At this time, I'd like to turn the program over to Jim.
Thank you, Kathy. Welcome, folks. I really appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you today. And just as we have watched the profession continue to emerge, one of the things at ISM, we have had a long-standing position in the industry of offering different certifications. And what I'm going to do is go through today where we're at in the current state, some of the new programs we've brought on, but I'm also going to give a little bit of perspective around why this is important and what is really emerging inside of our profession. So I'll talk a little bit about who ISM is, a little bit to our history. We'll go through and spend a good amount of time talking about the evolution of supply management. And what I really want you to be able to take away here is the why does it matter? And one of the things you're going to start to see, we are actually having more and more presence at the executive staff. The work we do is able to be measured in the different documents, the different financial documents that are put together. If you're a publicly traded company on a quarterly basis, privately traded company or private company, it is of different maybe timing, but it's same. Everybody is generally working within a cash flow statement, a balance sheet, and a profit and loss statement. And when you can see the difference that you make inside of those different performance models or performance indicators, it really starts to help you get a seat at the table. We'll talk about the 3 different certifications that ISM offers, a little bit of the history, and we will talk to the new program that we have this year, which is the APSM, and we're really excited about that. Talk a little bit about the certification process, the journey, what we go through, and then some of the different study options that ISM does offer. A little bit about ISM. We've been around over 100 years, and our position or our mission statement is really to advance the practice. We want to continue to drive the value and competitive advantage, but we also want to do it in the spirit of making sure that we have a prosperous and sustainable world. And that's an area that continues to really emerge and also challenge organizations. So in the past, we've really gone after the bottom line dollar as the end state game. Now we're having to do this in a more viable position to say, we are going to do this for the right reasons and making sure that the company is viewed as a solid performer from the products and services it delivers, but also is good for the planet. So ISM has been a first for a number of different elements. We were formed back in the post-World War I era by the United States government, and it was around the trying to coordinate purchasing managers. So the war efforts really started to show you needed to have a solid supply chain. but the standards at which people procured and got things to the front line were very abstract, very unconnected. And so ISM really formed back at that time. We were the first to bring forward a supply chain certification. We put out a report on business on a monthly basis. And this is around the PMI is what it's referred to. And we look at manufacturing sectors, we look at service sectors, and we look at the hospital sector. This is data that really is trying to take a look at what are the sources of strength that the economy has for corporations, and what are some of the challenges that are coming forward. So it is a way to kind of look at and sense the environment as you're going forward. We have a number of different achievement awards that go on. If you've ever been to one of our conferences, you'll see that we have Shipment of Gold Medal Award. We have started into more profession-centric type of awards. We brought forward the principles of sustainability, ethics, and social responsibility. This, you're going to see a lot more effort in the coming year with some of the things that ISM is going to be doing. And hopefully when we're back next year doing the same kind of presentation, we'll be able to talk about our sustainability certification. Although we're not there, we're in progress of creating. We have a supplier diversity certification, and we continue to emerge with connecting people from a diversity pledge, which continues to fund some of the efforts in the profession. So the challenges that we have, supply management continues to reshape itself. We have technology. Every one of us is emerged in the digital environment in some form or fashion. Whether we're on our smartphone, inside of our laptop, inside of our smart TVs, we have new technologies that really help us connect to what's going on. Now look inside of the corporation, you have several emerging technologies that are really allowing us to get us handle around how to automate some of the processes, how to control some of the end-to-end supply chain from the sensing or from the supply and operations planning into actually producing a good or service into cash flow. We have ongoing technology evolution within Internet of Things. We're seeing an explosive growth in artificial intelligence. And what we have to do is figure out how do we keep pace. Sustainability. Corporations are being faced with challenges here in the next 5 to 10 years around standards that are going to be federally regulated around the globe. So how do we control the carbon emissions or environment when we're dealing with things known as Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3? And a Scope 3 has 70 to 80% of our supply base is where that is being measured. And that falls into our world. How do we control that? Globalization. Whether we, you always hear these challenges and these stories around, we want to regionalize, nationalize, and bring jobs home. When you are actually in this profession, you realize that's not as easily said as, or not as easily done as said. And what we have to do is start to realize where sources of items are that we have to interface with. And we have to figure out a supply chain, whether it's in a local geography or whether it's in a cross-ocean geography. How do we optimize it? And uncertainty. I think one of the things that we've really seen in this past 5 years is that we are very prone to degrees of uncertainty. I think the COVID environment really emphasized what a supply chain is and brought together an awareness that this thing called a supply chain is actually very fragile, very important, and is something that we can get a handle on to figure out how do we move forward. And some of the statistics, organizations are still in the journey of trying to create roadmaps for digital transformation to help not only create more tools, but to try to figure out how do you scope some of these other avenues and how do you optimize. That brings us into what are some of the talent trends that we're seeing in supply chain and supply management. Corporations are looking for talent. And by the way, it's very difficult to find strong talent. And the new talents trends coming in, people are starting to look for people that can think strategic. And you'll see some of the statistics around what does that mean to think strategic? This is looking at the work we do and getting out of the old-fashioned way of doing it, thinking about how do you connect the work we're doing, reshaping it, and readopting it or readapting it into environmental situations, into your stakeholders' business engagement, into new and emerging markets, new and emerging products. Analytical expertise. Studies are showing that we continue to emerge on an exponential basis around the amount of information that is available to us. And this is a double-edged sword where analytical expertise and leveraging technology are almost one in the same, that as technology comes on board, it generates more data. More data requires people that can analyze it. Once you analyze it, you can figure out how do you optimize it. And that at times is driven through additional technology. So we need to pick up those skill set. And then the ongoing big challenge is how do you continue to influence and collaborate? We can no longer just sit in an office and generate purchase orders. We have to figure out how do you influence internal stakeholders from engineering, operations, marketing, into external organizations or your supply base. And even in some cases, we're interfacing with corporate customers. So when we are able to understand how to communicate the work we do and connect it to the work that our external partners are doing, we're able to come up with a more cohesive plan. And one of the things that we are continuing to see, and Gartner highlights this, and we're seeing this in CAPS research, only 30% of leaders agree that they have things under control when it comes into talent. We are constantly being asked, what can we do to increase talent? How do we find new talent? How do we partner with universities? How do we grow existing workforce within corporations? So that's one of the things that ISM can do, and we will help you see how some of the certifications will really drive this forward. So supply management, big term. And I think when we, what I observed, everybody in the world kind of started to understand what a supply management or supply chain was the first time we ran out of toilet paper. And this is goofy as it sounds, people started to associate this product that they need, not that they just want, but that they need, is no longer sitting in the shelves at the rate it was in the past. So what we have to do is figure out how to really balance all of the resources we have in the world. And when general populations start to understand some of these challenges and understand terminology, you see more pressure put back onto corporations. You see more pressure put back onto us on solving problems that are very complex, but solving them in a more timely manner. So at the end, we need to kind of look in the mirror and say, why should we care? I'm going to show you a few statistics that kind of put things in perspective. Within ISM, we have a partner organization called CAPS Research. And CAPS is a venture of Arizona State University and the ISM organization that really look at and create benchmark standards for a number of different supply chain metrics. And a couple that really stand out that will give perspective around why we should care. On the left-hand side, generally what we are known for, we handle sources and purchase items. This all comes into a type of spend that falls inside of a corporation. So in average, across all industries, you see approximately 40% of every dollar that is in a corporation's from a revenue standpoint is considered to be sourceable spend. What does that mean? If you're working for a $10 billion corporation, on average, you have supply management folks that are managing $4 billion worth of spend each and every year. That's a huge number. Now, you start to see some of these other indicators that, the managed spend and the addressable spend, and this just gives the different interactions that we have and the associated strategies that we take. But the big takeaway I want you to remember is, again, it's approximately and approaching 50% of what a corporation makes. So on average, it's 40%. Some other industries are up in the 60 and 70%. Take a look at the number at the bottom. We're seeing that the supply management operating expense as a percent of sourceable spend, 1%. What does this mean? When you take a look at how many resources are funded inside of a corporation, supply management generally makes up approximately 1% or 1.5% of the total headcount within a company. So what does this mean? You are in the profession, you're probably always taxed with a number of different challenges, and you're always hoping for more headcount. Well, generally, one of the things you start to find is the trend continues to not increase headcount, but decrease headcount. And when you're starting at 1.5% of the total headcount in the corporation that is in supply management, managing approximately 40% of the total revenue in sourceable spends, you want to make sure that you have very capable people. And this is the biggest challenge that corporations are dealing with. That magnitude of spend, you can't just have people that show up and do a rubber stamp on something. This is where the strategic thinking comes in. This is where we deal with challenges around globalization, technology, sustainability. All of these elements are things we need to control. On the right-hand side, you start to see the amount of spend that individual full-time employees are managing. And the key takeaway here I want you to remember, take a look at the bottom, the return on investment. What corporations are realizing, for every dollar that's invested inside of supply management, on average, we're getting approximately 1,000% rate of return. And so when corporations see that capability, and when you're able to articulate the impact you make, the job becomes far more engaging, far more enjoyable, and we have stakeholders that want to treat us a little bit better than we've been treated in the past, and they want you to come have a seat at the table. So this is one of the biggest challenges, and your executive staff, all of this is very visible and transmits directly into those balance sheets and the profit and loss statement. So take a look in the mirror, understand your value that you bring forward, and you all of a sudden start to see the future that you have, but you also start to understand, I need to pick up some additional skills, and certification is one of those avenues that you can start to close that particular gap. Supplier diversity. This is another set of indicators that are coming out of CAPS research. On average, corporations deal with about 10% of their strategic suppliers fall into the diverse profile. Strategic spends, about 11% fall into that. So one of the things we start to see is, as we continue to emerge in the world of dealing with and managing diverse suppliers within our sourceable spending, we have to find ways to continue to connect those dots, because there are unique challenges in this environment. What you see on the right-hand side, where does generally the supplier diversity program reside? And it is at times, the 21% of the corporations have no supplier diversity. And yet at the same time, they're trying to do these things without a skill set or dedicated resource base. You see within supply chain and procurement approaching 55 to 60%. And that's really where we are seeing the growth rate continued to occur. In the past, 20, 30 years ago, human resources took a very active role when it got into diversity / supplier diversity. What we have found, though, you can't just treat diversity as an equal type of element. You have to put in place around supplier diversity and what are the infrastructure, business processes, and mechanisms that they have to engage with that have them operating at a strategic level. So at times we have to understand our own capability of thinking strategically, but we also have to work with diverse suppliers to increase their level of sophistication in supply management. So again, a little bit of the why is it important to me and why should I care? This is another chart that shows how are the headcount resources distributed within a supply management organization. And you can see on the left-hand side, transactional buying is still making up approximately 35% of an organizational headcount. So this takes into account, this is back into that 1.5% of a total headcount that fall into supply management. And this is a way to say if that 1.5% equaled 100 employees in supply management, where should they be distributed? And where are corporations distributing that headcount today? And so you see transactional buying all the way across to leadership team, category managers, supplier risk management. So what are we seeing from a trend standpoint? Well, in a trend standpoint, one of the biggest things we're seeing that transactional buying is going down. 5 to 8 years ago, it was at 65 to 70% of an organizational makeup. That's very transactional. We're down into the 35% on average. But what you see are these other strategic roles that continue to grow. Strategic sourcing and category management, by far the largest growth rate inside of corporations. And this isn't just about a dedicated position. This is about people that have the skill sets to fill that requirement. And that's one of the values that we see as we go forward with our certification program. That is covering those items that are in that green. These are the growth areas. So one of the things we want to continue to help people realize, your future is going to align to one of these roles. The general direction with transactional buying, we're seeing more and more automated systems that are taking care of the mundane, repetitive type of purchasing, and we're shifting that headcount over into more strategic-based programs. This is the evolution. So very tactical. In my early career within the Intel Corporation, very tactical. It was an engineering-driven organization. And what they looked at from a supply management was just get me what I need, get it as fast as you can, and I really am not that concerned about how much it costs, because we were very quick into transitioning technology year over year. Well, what has happened is that corporations can no longer operate into that mindset. You can't just say, I need to, produce at any cost. What you're finding is that more and more competition is coming into the environment, and that's driving a need to deliver innovative products and services that are cost effective and cost competitive. So what we're doing is taking a look and saying we're shifting from this tactical of just generating purchase orders and trying to find easy wins on cost reduction and cost avoidance into the strategic world, where we're looking at finding and sensing what's happening in our environment. What is a trend looking like for commodity prices 1 year, 3 years, 5 years down the road? What does the risk profile look like in different geographies around the world in that 1 year, 3 year, 5 year? How can we start to continue to figure out how do we integrate key suppliers when there might be challenges on trade embargoes or ongoing nationalism, and figure out where do you find alternative sources? So this is our new world. and very profound. The bulk of organizations are going through a very well-defined transformation initiative. But because you have a well-defined transformation initiative doesn't automatically mean it's easy. Because one of the things you'll have is a defined plan, but if you don't have a skill set to meet the plan, you continue to operate in the old-fashioned firefighting. When you get ongoing capability, and as we align it within the 3 certifications that we offer, generally where people look and say, what is the impact to me? Oftentimes people look and say, okay, it's a large effort to go get a certification. They're not easy. I'm busy. I work full-time. I have a family. I have outside commitments. Why should I go do it? Well, when you start looking at it, salary becomes a large driver. Opportunity to continue to expand in the profession. But you start to see that you are now progressing towards the right. You're seeing best practices, return on investment, strategic focus, and that's where you take from your personal connection on the left-hand side into what the organization is looking for, that strategic connection. All of this impacts us. And when you start to understand how you fit into these different avenues, it's easier to justify going forward and getting that certification. ISM put out the 2023 salary survey. And if you have an opportunity as a member to go in and take a look at it, you can download it and see the full salary survey. I just pulled out a few key nuggets in here around the average salary by certification. And we show those certifications, not just ISM certifications, but also our competitors, because we want to just basically show that it's acknowledged getting additional skills is a high demand area, whether it's ISM certifications or maybe it's APICS or ASCM or SIPs in our geographical dispersed organizations. It is critical to continue to gain these skills. Now, I'm going to sit back and say, well, I'm an ISM employee. ISM has the best certifications. And I'll stand by that. But I also will say I've had other certifications in my past, and they were equally beneficial to me in my career. So I just pulled out a few data points, and it shows that on an average, without a certification, employees are making finding from the data coming in. I go from 116,000 a year, I'm up into the 140,000 a year. And we see a personal development really makes a difference. CPSD, on average, 163,000. So there is value. Now, I'm not going to kid you to say, if you get the certification, you're automatically going to get a bump in pay. That's generally not how things occur. But you have a skill set to progress through your corporation's growth structure, career growth, advancement to attain these, or to help you if you look in other corporations or other industries. When you have the skills, you're more marketable. ISM certifications that we have, the 3. We have a certified professional in supply management. It's been around since 2008, and we have had approximately 20,000 people attain this certification. We have the certified professional in supplier diversity. It's been around since 2011, and we're approaching 1,000. And one of the drivers here is that organizations continue to go through a growth opportunity in supplier diversity, but the need for it isn't as high. Now, one of the things we're seeing, more and more people are coming to pick it up because the skill set, and not just the role itself, the skill set is starting to be demanded more and more in the corporation. And then the new one we have this year is what's referred to as our Associate Professional in Supply Management, APSM. What's that? Well, we are bringing forward a certification that is connecting university students to the profession. It's eligible to people that are in a junior and senior year of their degree program and in supply chain or supply management. They have the opportunity to get the certification. They have a 5-year eligibility to attain, once they take that certification, to graduating, to having that 3-year in the profession to get the full certification. So it's a connection. It's an it's a engagement strategy to help pull the university closer to corporations. And we're seeing more and more students that want to have additional education and certification. So we have a number of universities that we're working with this year where their professors are teaching separate preparation courses, or they are integrating the skill set into existing courses and curriculums. So very excited. We're starting to see a lot of opportunity and growth in this area. Now, in CPSM, the exam details. We have 3 exams that make up the certification. We have the supply management core that is built of 7 different competencies, from sourcing, category management, negotiation, down to cost and price and financial analysis. 180 questions, 3-hour exam. We have the second exam, supply management integration. This is when we start to help connect the dots between purchasing, procurement, into how do you gain the access to deliver the product? How do you forecast? So we're thinking about creating supply chain strategies. How do you look at your demand planning and forecasting? How do you connect a quality management system? So when you get product, you get it at the expected quality levels. So you wouldn't want to have a product that you buy get delivered very quickly, but only 75% of the items are functional. And we actually are continuing to build this in logistics and project or materials management, because you now have to start thinking about what kind of inventory do I bring? What kind of modality transportation do I use? And then project management. More and more of our work is bringing the entire strategy and system into a corporation. And if you're starting up a new factory, you need to think about project management skills. If you're delivering new product implementation or introduction, you need to think about how do you factor them in from a project. This is 165 questions, 2 hours, 45 minutes. The third exam on CPSM is your leadership and transformation in supply management. This is when we need to be thinking about what are these really strategic roles to lead an organization. How do I gain business acumen? How do I figure out how do I influence organization, stakeholder? How do I develop people? How do I think about the technology and systems to bring forward? What are the risk elements and compliance that I have to take into account? And then the last is that corporate social responsibility, which is your sustainability and emerging environment, or ESG, your environment, social governance, and that continues to grow. That third exam, 165 questions, 2 hours, 45 minutes. Now, APSM is only the first core exam. So students will prepare to take one exam. They achieve and pass that exam. They get their application in. And then for them to become fully certified in CPSM, they have a 5-year window to become eligible and take that supply management integration and the leadership and transformation exam. Supplier diversity. We're going back into the distribution of headcount. And one of the things I like to point out to people, because you're going to see our CPSD is made up of 2 exams, the core exam and the supplier diversity exam. And people often say, well, why do I have to have both? Well, one of the things driving, if you remember the bar charts going towards the right, second one here, strategic sourcing and category management. By far the largest growing areas in any organization. And that's because they are being asked to understand the mechanics of dealing with procurement, the strategic. Let's take a look at supplier diversity. A small subset are people that are dedicated into that role. If you have 2% of your organization that understands supplier diversity, and you have 10% of your total spend that are diverse suppliers, you basically have to figure out how do you help others in the different positions pick up those skill set to not only manage a strategic sourcing or category management, but do it with the spirit of driving supplier diversity into it. So it's a combination of these two, understanding the mechanics of supply management and understanding the supplier diversity elements. That drives us into the exam details. You have to take the first supply management core exam, 180 questions, 3 hours. And then there's the essentials in supplier diversity. This is the second exam that brings you forward into helping implement a program. Look at indicators, look at how do you come up with budgeting? How do you connect it to your environmental and social responsibility? And how do you drive advocacy programs? This is a 165 question, 2 hour, 45-minute exam. Certification process. This is the same that we talked about last year. First of all, we have to, have you consider what is the eligibility? Do you meet that requirement? And that's on the next slide. You start your journey around acquiring study materials and preparing yourself. You register and schedule exams. And this, to me, is by far probably the most critical, because once you put a stake in the ground, you're going to force yourself to study and find the time in order to meet taking the exam. And once you pass the different exams, you put on a certification or an application process in to get your complete certification. Eligibility, 3 years. If you have a bachelor's degree and are working in a supply management environment, or it's 5 years if you do not have a qualified bachelor's degree. So you're working in the profession for a 5-year period. This is where that APSM provides a 5-year window in order to, 2 years to finish up their junior year, senior year. Plus, at that point, they'll have a degree. They'll need 3 additional years to meet the minimum standard for that final certification. Different ways that we offer for the teaching and helping prepare. We have a digital learning environment where you can go and purchase a learning system that is just one module at a time, or allows you to kind of progress at your own self-paced environment. It's made up of, it goes through diagnostic practice exams, helps you understand where your strengths are, where your weaknesses. It'll put you through a study plan. It'll have practice questions, and it'll have a bit of gamification with flashcards. So you prepare yourself in that journey, and these individual programs are available for purchase, and you acquire them and have a 6-month window. You can go into the middle one here. You can go after a bundled program. So if you want to go after and purchase a learning system that covers all 3 exams for CPSM, or both exams for CPSD, it's the same digital product line that gives you that experience. Now, We do offer learning systems in a print version, but one of the things that we're, where you can order the books, we phasing itself out. So as our workforce becomes more digitally astute, people are using the online learning systems, and the digital environment is becoming the preference. And then last, you can go through a guided learning. And this is an opportunity for you to have a self-paced experience plus a weekly webinar with an instructor that can explain more of the details and help prepare you for the exam itself. So there's a number of different ways. Individual chapters, you also may have somebody that's gone through our qualification workshop. They may be able to set up some tailored workshops for your constituencies to help them prepare. That's not on here because that is offered as a totally separate product line through the chapters or through other small businesses. Same within preparation for the exam. We want you to purchase the exam through ISM. You get the confirmation email, and then you decide, do you want to go to a testing center, or we actually now have the opportunity to do this online. So it's an online experience. And once you get the schedule or the exam scheduled, they'll walk you through the preparation, and you'll have an opportunity to sit down either at a testing center or in your location of work or at home to complete each and every exam. Couple things, people often say, well, what does it take to really have the secret sauce to get through? There are a number of different techniques that we ask people to kind of consider. Here's a couple key that I try to talk to and teach and help people, because it helped me. When I take a look back on my journey going through here and through each of the 3 exams or 4 exams, these were things that really made a difference for me. You have to really manage your time in that experience. It's a 3-hour experience or a 2-hour and 45-minute experience. And you have a lot of questions. So on average, you have 1 question every single minute to answer. You have to be cognizant of your time and figure out how to manage it. We want you to answer every question. You should go through on the first pass, answer the question that you know. Leave the ones that you don't know, leave them blank, and you could come back later. But if you get to the end and you have 30 seconds left and 10 questions, go through and guess, because you have a 25% chance of getting it right. Each question has 4 multiple choice answers. The game can, make or break the difference. And I've worked with people that have missed passing the exam by 1 or 2 questions, and yet they skipped 10 or 15 questions. And just guessing may have gotten them over the hump. Come up with the strategy around test anxiety. It's real. Now, younger populations that are in the digital environment, they are just coming from a university setting or education setting. Test anxiety isn't as much of an issue. The longer we've been away from taking tests, the more we have the opportunity to have test anxiety. And it really is just a function of whatever works for you. Stopping, closing your eyes, taking a deep breath, that worked for me. Others have other ways of dealing with it. People at times will say, well, I studied the practice questions and the questions on the exam were different. That is the reality. We are preparing you with different skill sets that allow you to think critically on what options and paths you may take to answer each and every situation. And that's our real world. We get into our world, there are nothing but obstacles and variables thrown at us. We have to be able to think on the fly to come up with solutions. And that's really what we're trying to do, is simulate that environment in a test environment. And then it really does, pay to become a member, because there are discounts that go with it. If you fail, and it happens, so, it's not the end of the world. What we do is have you go back, look at your scores, see areas that you didn't do so well, and you'll get a percentage of questions that you missed in certain competencies. And if you have less than 75% of the questions that were answered correctly, say on sourcing or category management, let's say you only got 50% of those questions correct. That's probably an area you really need to focus on. If you have another competency, cost and price, and you got 95%, doesn't mean you don't study for those areas, but it's less likely that you need to, close the gaps. And then again, assess time management during your exam. Too often people run out of time and they forgot about it. So what you really have to do is think about, what can I do to kind of get myself back on course? Figuring out how to go through and complete the application. It's all online, walk you through it. Our customer service will also walk you through it. But we look for proof of education, work experience documentation, proof that the exams were completed, and we have access to all of that. And then there is a fee associated with it. All of this information can be found on our website, our certification and training /certification, and can walk you through. There are guides that, a number of different questions. All the pricing is covered in this site. I don't talk to pricing today because there are options. And I don't want somebody to say, well, Jim said I only had to pay $838, but the circumstance and variables were different. So I, again, leave the pricing to you going and either contacting ISM or finding it and learning about it on our website. With that, I would just like to say thank you. I want to open it up for questions. Kathy, if you would like to potentially read some of the questions that have come up, we can take time to try to answer them.
Sure. We had one person wanted you to go back to one of your slides. It was the one that explained more of the exam details before you got into the CPSM.
Okay, let's see.
I'm not sure which one he meant, though. Exam details. I think it's this one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Scott had any specific question, or if you do, Scott, just put something in the chat for us, and that way Jim can address your question. And if anybody else has a question, please make sure you let us know what it is. Jim, one thing I did wanted to ask you is the learning materials, the digital, how long is it available once you purchase it?
6 months if you buy an individual exam. So if I want to just get a learning system for supply management core, you'll have 6 months to use it. And what we find is it's generally, on average, about 3 to 5 months is what it takes a person to get through an exam. So if you want just to buy the individual learning solution or system, 6 months. If you want to buy the bundle, all 3 of them for CPSM or all 2 of those for CPSD, you have a 1-year window. And the 1 year, again, just kind of assumes that you're going to have a structured plan and try to drive personal commitment in order to achieve it. And this is one of those things, I've worked with students a lot. It is hard to drag this over years. And I know we're busy. It's a huge commitment to go do it. What we really want to do, though, is try to help people kind of get it done, because you see some of the differences on some of the earlier slides I was showing, the impact we make to the corporation, the compensation that comes with it, and then the career advancement that is obtainable.
Okay, Scott said one more. So if you go, I'm not sure if he meant back or forward.
Okay. Not a problem, Scott.
This one? Not sure if he meant this one or not.
Okay.
And how long are the exams valid for, once you pass it?
once you pass it, you have a 4-year window to basically finish up the other exams that are needed and go through the application process. Unless you're in the APSM, that's extended to a 5-year window, and that's because students have to graduate. They're generally finish their last 2 years and graduate, then work for a corporation for a 3-year period. So that exam is the exception on being available for a 5-year window versus a 4-year window.
And just to clarify for everybody out there, the APSM is only valid for students that are undergrads?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. And they have to be full-time?
Well, they have to be full-time. Now, you can be in an MBA program also. So
okay,
it
good.
really, again, this is really is trying to connect the student at the end of whatever program they're going through and help them connect into the business going forward. But generally, yeah, what we're seeing today is most universities we're working with, they're connecting it to their undergraduate program. They have a much larger volume, but I can anticipate we're going to see it being linked into more master's levels also.
Definitely. Definitely. Well, thank you very much. Let me see. I might have one more question. Peter, you have a question. Did you want to put it in the chat or did you want to speak live your question? I'll let you talk right now, Peter, so that way we can answer, you can ask your question. Okay, Peter.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Hey, Jim. Good.
Hi, Peter.
Good presentation. We have I'm associate professor at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. We have a rather active BS LSCM program that's connected to ISM through our department chair, Jim Marion. And we have even though we've been around forever and have 2 main campuses, I'm in the worldwide campus, which means we have students all over the world, and we're basically online for the most part. That means your definition of full-time is we're not traditional 15 credits going into a brick and mortar place. We're talking about students who we have 9-week semesters, so we have students taking 3 or 4 courses a semester, and that doesn't fall into your normal definition of full-time.
Right.
So at least you're saying these students are not eligible?
No, what we're doing is we start with that as a premise, and we're working today with each university in whatever the unique situation presents itself. So what we would do is recommend to have that university, either through yourself or through the appropriate folks, contact us, and we'll set up a meeting and kind of say, okay, this is what we are dealing with. How do we engage the students, and is it possible? So, it really is amazing how many universities, as much as you would like to think they're the same, there's so many small differences between one and the other that we are getting together and we're saying, okay, here's what we're dealing with, here's how we're going to work it, and here's how we're going to engage with it. So let's have that conversation and we'll figure out what we can do.
Well, they do. I think Jim Marion is having conversations with ISM about general things, but this is something that I'm not sure he's aware of. That
the name isn't familiar yet, and generally I've been working with connecting the curriculum. Now he may be working with Jessica Boyd, who is the program director, and I may not be aware of it just yet.
Is there any information you could email me?
I could direct you right now. Just the best source of information is just going to our website, and there is the whole ismworld.org/APSM, and that's it has really good overview of what's going on. And then you can reach out to myself directly or through Jessica Boyd, and that's J Boyd, BOYD, at ismworld.org.
Okay.
or myself at jfleming, FLEMING at ismworld.org. Be glad to
Okay.
talk to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, perfect. What we'll do is when we do our follow-up email to everybody, I will include that information as well. So that
Great.
way, if you want to contact Jessica or Jim directly, you may do so. But thank you, Peter, for the question. Say, I don't actually see any more questions at this point.
Okay.
And guess what? We're out of time. But thank you all for joining us today. And thank you, Jim, for bringing this presentation to us once again.
Thanks. And again, this is an exciting field, folks. A lot of challenges. We are here to, solve and make a difference in the world. So continue to fight the good fight and pick up the skill set that it's going to make your life more manageable, less firefighting, and impacting not only the top line, but the bottom line and the society. Thanks, folks. Good luck.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.